For those of you that are watching, my name is Wendy, and we have about 7 minutes left, and so we'll just let people join, and then we'll get started. It's 10 a.m. That's 10 a.m. my time, Mountain Standard. Hey, Steph, I'm on the live right now. Okay.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, guys. Oh, here.
We'll talk.
Guys, can I help you get on?
Okay, we'll talk later.
Okay, bye.
All right, it is 10 a.m. time to start. And before I start, I'd just like to say that I've had a family emergency, so I haven't had a lot of sleep in the last couple nights. So I probably will be pausing and referring to my notes more than I would like to. So I do apologize for that. My name is Wendy Busse. I'm a registered dietitian from Red Deer, Alberta, Canada, and I've specialized in food sensitivities for over 25 years. Currently, I'm the director of the FAST Freedom Program, and FAST stands for the Food Avoidance and Sensitivity Trap. So we help food sensitive clients to make peace with food and expand their diet. And today we're going to talk about food sensitivity testing. But first, I'd just like to give you a little bit of background on myself. So as I've said, I've been in food sensitivity for pretty much my entire career. And I've done a number of different activities. And but throughout all that has been client counseling. And about 6 years ago, when video conference counseling became more of a reality, it allowed me to specialize and focus in on my keen interest area, which was histamine intolerance and mast cell disease. And for those that aren't familiar with it, those are clients that are experiencing like pseudo-allergic like reactions, but they don't have true diagnosable food allergy. But through working with these clients and some great conversations, I really came to appreciate and respect the huge mind-body connection in food sensitivity. And I want to tell you about a case that turned my thinking in my career like 180. And this lady contacted me. She was having fairly severe reflux and was down to eating chicken and rice, and was really upset because she was still having symptoms. So she thought that meant she was allergic to all food. And she was also carrying an epinephrine auto-injector because she was concerned these symptoms would then turn into anaphylaxis. We developed a food reintroduction plan, but she emailed back the next day and said, I can't do it. And over the next week or so, we emailed back and forth, and the topic was on an antihistamine medication that her doctor wanted her to try. But she was really hesitant because of the fearful information on the internet about this medication. And so I was encouraging her to take a step back and to look at this information objectively. After about a week, she emailed and she said, if I'm only eating two foods and I'm still having symptoms, maybe it's not food. And she went back onto her regular diet and did very well. And she still had some reflux symptoms, although they were much reduced because now she didn't have the stress from this futile search of finding these elusive food triggers. And also she was enjoying, loving eating again after having been so restricted, and sitting, thinking about what happened. Like, it was almost like it was almost a shock to me, like this change like this in her. And I think what happened was helping her to step back and be objective about her medication fears also helped her to step back and be objective about her food related fears. And so that case, I would say that the big switch was that rather than reading and trying to learn everything I could about histamine intolerance and mast cell disease, I started to focus my learning attention on the mind-body connection, and I started to work with clients to started to work with clients to help them deal or to work past their food related fear. And so that really led me into the development of the FAST Freedom Program. And as I said, FAST stands for the Food Avoidance and Sensitivity Trap. And it is a model, and this model is on my website, the FAST Freedom Program. I'm sorry, I was supposed to at the very beginning give my information to contact me. It is, you can contact me through FAST Freedom Program or wendybusse.com, or my email is wendy@wendybusse.com. And my Instagram is wendy.fastfreedomprogram. I'll put that all in the contact information later. Anyway, so if you're interested in what I'm talking about, you can go to my website. I have a whole free like public resources section. But the food avoidance and sensitivity trap is a model that I created to show how worry and food avoidance create mental associations between food and symptoms. And then this worry and this thinking about food creates associations between food and symptoms. And then food becomes like a danger signal. Like, you know, for one person, a danger signal could be, like we all have danger signals, obviously like a car coming at us at well, any speed, a car coming at us. You know, for some people it could be snakes, it could be spiders, it could be a number of things. But for many people, because of this worry, food can become a danger cue. And then when the person eats the food or foods, or even sometimes thinks about the foods, the limbic system then overreacts. And these fight and flight symptoms can then be interpreted as a food sensitivity symptom. And then that just reinforces the food symptom association. And the term I've created for this is conditioned food sensitivity, based on the Pavlovian food conditioning research. So now on to our topic that we want to talk about today, food sensitivity. Testing. The bottom line is that each test gives a different answer. And every company, food sensitivity company, claims that they have the gold standard. But unfortunately, none of the companies actually do any research to support their claims. And when I've talked with companies, what I'm often told is, well, it would just be way too expensive. Even though these companies are making millions of dollars, it's, you know, the study would be way too expensive. And all a company would need to do is take a group of people, randomize them. Everybody gets the food sensitivity test. One group eliminates the results based on their actual test. The other group eliminates results, their testing results gets mixed up, and they eliminate based on the wrong testing results. And then if the company before the study could pick one or two meaningful clinical outcomes to measure, and if they could actually show a difference in the treatment group versus the control group, that would be very interesting and would lend support to their studies, to their testing. And the fact that no company has done this type of a study, you can imagine how cheap that would be, right? Like, so oh, we can't afford to do it, that doesn't sound true. So that no companies have done a study like this, my assumptions would be that they know that they would get results that they wouldn't be happy about. And I say two meaningful outcomes, because a lot of times what these companies do is they run a study, but they measure a whole gamut of different immunological chemicals, for example, and then any change they report is meaningful. And so, as you know, the more tests you run, the more chance there is of false positive results. And also, a change in an obscure immune chemical really means nothing. So a test would have to be before the study indicating some actual clinically meaningful changes. As I say, no companies have done this, so that really brings questions as to why they're not doing this. So I'll briefly chat about the most common tests, and then we'll talk about how these tests can have devastating effects on mental health. So IgG testing is the first, and then in Canada here, it is by far the most common. I think in the States, it is less. It is less common in the States, but. So IgG is one of 5 antibodies that our immune system produces. So like with all antibodies, IgG is directed against a very specific target. And so most of our immunity to different bacteria or viruses are IgG antibodies. And we also make IgG to food. We all make IgG to food. There has been a theory for many decades that food IgG will complex with its analogous food, and then that forms a complex. So if you have IgE to egg, the theory says, and you eat egg, the theory says that'll form a complex and it'll deposit into tissues, which then leads to inflammation, and there's always a lot of talk about leaky gut. There has been a fair amount of research on this topic, and there is moderate, I would say, evidence that it is not effective. And so that's very different than when people say, oh, well, there's no studies. There are studies, and the studies there's very moderate of not being effective. But here really is the real clincher, is that every lab does their own technique. So if you send a single blood sample to 5 labs, you will get 5 different answers. So even if a study ever does come out that shows promising results, those results cannot be generalized to any other lab because they're doing it in a different way. IgG is offered through several laboratories, so a practitioner might tell a person to go to a laboratory and have blood drawn. In Canada, our big players are the Rocky Mountain Analytics and Dynacare. I'm not sure of the big players in the States. There's probably a lot. And it's also offered through home testing, where just on somebody on themselves, they can send away for a kit. And Everlywell is the big player in that market. These home testing kits really tend to come and go. I want to share with you a little conversation that I had probably about 3 years ago. And I called a lab that was offering combined IgE and IgG4 testing. Now, this is completely illogical. I don't have time to go into all of the exact reasons why, but IgG4 has been shown to basically increase tolerance in IgE-mediated allergy. So combining them and reporting them combined is completely illogical. So I phoned this company. And I was put through to their clinical director, and I was expecting to get an argument. And this lady said, no, you're right, it doesn't make any sense. And then she went on to say that the antibody testing that they use was developed in the 1980s, like 40 years ago. So antibody testing has come leaps and bounds in 40 years. And I was like startled and dumbfounded. And I said, well, why are you still offering this? And she said, well, clinical studies show, and then she stopped herself because then she would know I would be saying, please send these clinical studies. So she said, case studies show it's very effective. And then she said, and practitioners love it. So basically, they're making money. The practitioners are making money, they're making money, everybody's making money. So it doesn't really matter to them that the test is completely illogical. I wish I had that recorded. That would have been nice. But on to now ALCAT is another fairly common one, especially in the States, not so much in Canada. And it is a lab where all like the blood samples are sent to ALCAT. So the theory is that they can test the blood to see with different food if there is an increase in white blood cells. The theory is interesting, but as you know, theory does not make a valid test. MRT testing is another big one. Then with the LEAP menu plans, the clients can have their blood tested, and then a dietitian, unfortunately, then will make for them an eating plan based on the foods that they best tolerate. And from my work in mast cell activation syndrome, the whole idea of mediator release testing was extremely interesting, but again, just repeating, is that an interesting theory does not make a valid test. In the end, all of these companies will give different results. And that's how I present it to clients. I don't say, oh, there's no research, because clients don't care about if there's a research or not. I say, which company okay, so you want to have food sensitivity testing? Well, which company are you going to choose? But you're going to get a different result from every single company. So, and then that is enough that people go, maybe that starts to raise doubt in their mind. So who knows? Maybe one of these companies is on the right track, but if there isn't any research, how can we possibly judge that? I'd like to spend my final few minutes before we have questions just talking on the devastating mental health effects of food sensitivity testing. So when somebody has medically unexplained symptoms, they look for something to explain those symptoms. They often go to the internet and they start to research. They want to find a root cause. And so they read lots of scary information about food. And they also read theories about why we do not tolerate food. So various forms of dysbiosis, from SIBO to Candida, and then we've got the adrenal fatigue, problems methylating, leaky gut, you name it. I'm not saying that these problems aren't real. There's certainly evidence that they do affect health, but we don't have accurate diagnosis to know who does and does not have these conditions. And so coming back to our person, they read these scary food messages, they start thinking, oh, there's something really wrong with my body, I'm really sick. And then they have food sensitivity testing, which then confirms their suspicions that about food and about the the bad health of their body. And this testing is always positive. I myself, I have never talked with a client that has said they have had food sensitivity testing that said they didn't have any food sensitivities. Now, this is different than IgE blood testing, which is related to allergy, and that's another topic that we won't talk about today. But when it comes to food sensitivity testing, like the IgG, ALCAT, MRT, in my experience, I've never talked to anybody that says it's negative. And so this confirms their suspicions, and then it draws them into the food avoidance and sensitivity trap that I talked to. It increases their worry, their self-perception of being sick, and it can then really exacerbate conditioned food sensitivity, and then really significantly decrease this client's quality of life. So I'd like to end with just a little bit of information. Sorry if I can do a little plug for our work. So we're, again, the Fast Freedom Program, and so our program is based on a self-reflection, a 5-phase program self-reflection that clients go through to think about, try to step back from everything, this whole cycle they've been in, to try to help them step back from the cycle and take an objective look at it. So it's a self-study program with coaching by a registered dietitian. They have weekly check-ins and then video conference appointments as well. I also wanted to say that I will be launching a continuing education programs for dietitians and other healthcare professionals called Helping Food Sensitive Clients Through the Gray Zone. So this is the art and science of working with clients that don't fit into the neat practice guidelines of celiac disease or peanut allergy, those kind of gray zone clients. Everybody goes, I don't know what to do with this client. How do we start helping them? My goal was to have it done in 2 weeks from now, but I'm going to have to take a bit of a break for at least a couple of weeks, so it might be a month yet. But if you are interested, you can always contact me through, again, Wendy at wendybusse.com. That's just the easiest way. And I can put you on a list to let you know when it is available. So with that, thank you very much. And I will go back now, go back to take a look at the questions. Okay, so let's just say, I think everybody's talking about where they're from. Excited to chat. Okay, so Leah says, so sad and yet so true that these food sensitivity tests are not evidence-based and yet so prevalent. It is about the money, and the victim is the customer patient who ends up with a long list of don't eat foods and food fears. Unfortunately, one of the candidates for Academy of Nutrition Dietetics president currently offers food sensitivity testing as part of her practice. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think for a lot of what happens with a lot of practitioners is they say, oh, I really, I've had this, I worked with this testing with clients and it really makes a difference. But there's a lot of reasons why the testing can make a difference that has nothing to do with the test itself. Say, for example, the placebo effect is huge in this area, especially with conditioned food hypersensitivity. Conditioned food sensitivity is a nocebo effect, which is the opposite of the placebo effect. So you can imagine then, if there is placebo effect, what a tremendous difference that it can make. A lot of times when people eliminate foods, they just plain simply follow a healthier diet. They get away from, they eat on regular times, and they start thinking about it, and they start eating more homemade foods. Is it the restriction, or is it just that they're simply eating better? There can be a treatment effect. In my course, I have a whole long list of reasons why these tests appear to be effective when it has nothing to do with the testing. So, okay, so if a dietitian wants to learn more about how to handle who believe they have food sensitivities, are there currently any books, websites you would recommend? Excellent to hear about your continuing education. So we'll deal with that question. Yeah, so I would say, sorry, and this is a bit caught me off guard. It's always good, like if you're a new dietitian, it's always good to start with the basics, right? So your academy has, I believe, a course in food allergy, like to start with sort of those basic understanding about, say, IgE mediated, so that would be like peanut anaphylaxis, understanding about celiac disease, eosinophilic esophagitis, like, or gastroenteritis disease, like understanding the sort of, in my course, I talk about, an iceberg, what's known and what's not known, right? You need to understand what's known, first of all. You don't have to know all the details or be an expert by any means, but you've got to have a good, strong basis. That basis is not enough to help gray zone clients because it comes then into counseling, right? It's those softer skills that end up helping them. But you do really need that basis. So going back to, those courses that are offered on the basis is good. And then, learning about the mind-body connection, there's so much. Learning about the nocebo effect, learning, etc. If I won't go on to too much more. You can even contact me if you want more details. There is a second question. For customers, patients who come to you believing they have multiple food sensitivities, are there any resources that you would recommend? Actually, they might, and it's one of the things too is that I just wanted to say too, like when I talk about conditioned food sensitivity, that doesn't mean all multiple food sensitivities are conditioned. There's physically driven and there's conditioned, and they overlap and they intermingle. We can't really separate them out. And it is not our job to tell a client or even to wonder in our own mind, is this conditioned or is it physically driven? That's really for us to provide resources and for the client to navigate their own way through their journey. Honestly, I would say, plug for me, but nevertheless, is my website, wendybusse.com. There's a public resources. I have a blog. I have a podcast that I'm starting. We've got infographics. There's like a lot of really good information out there on that. If anybody else has resources to recommend, please put them in there. Okay, so my email, post my email. Honestly, I hope I'm doing this right. I was until Monday this week, I'd heard of Facebook Live, but I'd never even really thought about it. I am social media very incompetent. So there, I think I did it. Yes, I did. Good. Okay, going on. Great point by Wendy. Is it the test that is making the difference, or the fact that the patient client is working with a dietitian and being heard? Exactly. Actually, one of the things, a quick story I wanted to tell is when I did my master's thesis, I was studying the low histamine diet. That was back in the mid-1990s. And I was a volunteer at the Allergy Nutrition Clinic at Vancouver General Hospital. And my job was to go through a questionnaire with people. It took about a half an hour to go through. And it was amazing, the difference. Almost all the clients that came in, the difference in their body language. Often they would come in and they'd be sullen and, hunched a bit and very sad looking. And a half an hour of asking questions and simply just listening and writing down the answer was sometimes a miraculous change in, they were smiling and more upright, and whether did that change last an hour, a day, a week, I don't know. But I think that is, Leah, you made like a fantastic point. It's just sometimes that being heard is so powerful. And that's a lot of, what the course that I'm going to offer is based on. Is we can't tell clients, like, clients come in and they want us to tell them, you're allergic to this, and this because you're not methylating and you're this and that and the other thing. But, we know how that goes when they get that information from other people. In the short term, it's good. Long term, it's not. But we can, we can be there really to validate their struggles and how really challenging what they are facing is. Okay, and then Karina, thank you. Hello, Karina. The course is pediatric food allergy. That's fantastic. Okay, so I don't know if I missed any questions. I'm sorry. I'm just going to take another quick look. And we do have 6 minutes. So, and I'll just wait for more questions to come in. But just if I could offer, if I could offer a little bit of help. I know, Leah, you had said that a lot of the dietitians are fairly young. One of the things that really helped me on my journey as a dietitian, especially in the area of food sensitivity, was that I don't have to have answers. For a lot of years when I was working with clients, I wanted to be able to like almost control them, like tell them, okay, yeah, that naturopath is wrong, this person is wrong, this is what you need to do, and I need to have a so I need to have an answer to solve your problem. And letting go of that and realizing that I am simply, I think of it like a car journey. The client is driving a car. I sit beside the client. I offer evidence the best I know. It's my responsibility to understand the evidence that is there and to provide it in a meaningful way and to provide support. But the client completely drives the car. So even if I'm working with a client and they say, yeah, I want to have food sensitivity testing, I will, provide the evidence. But if that is what they choose, that is what they choose. And that's not my responsibility to change them, right? I'm still there to support them. So getting out of that mindset of I have to have the answers for me was a huge change in my ability simply to support and be with the client. So I hope for the young dietitians that might save you a few years of grief, a lot of years of grief and frustration that I went through when I first started in this area. Okay, so I think, yeah, we're summing up here. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. And and good luck in your establishing your own practices. Okay, so we have a good question. Have you found a eating disorder connection? Absolutely. That a lot of so I'm sure that you're all familiar with the term orthorexia. There's a huge overlap. It doesn't mean somebody with food sensitivities has orthorexia, but if you take the orthorexic population and the food sensitive population is it a Venn diagram? There's a huge overlap between them. Also, many clients with an eating disorder saying I can't eat because I'm allergic to da 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 is a lot more socially acceptable than saying I have an eating disorder. So also a third point is that, and I'm not an expert in eating disorders, but my understanding with, say, anorexia nervosa, for example, a lot of it is related to control around food. So is often conditioned food sensitivity, often how people get sucked into the trap is control. They have medically unexplained symptoms. Their lives are very uncertain. And it's really I feel for people. I myself have always been healthy, and I can't imagine what a lot of times clients with medically unexplained symptoms go through. And so food can be a way of controlling. At least that is my understanding. I'm not saying that's the right answer. That is my understanding from my experience with talking to people. And also keep in mind, I am a dietitian. I'm not a psychologist. But yeah, thank you for bringing it up, Leah. There is an overlap, but I also wanted to really importantly point out, just because someone has food sensitivity doesn't mean they have an eating disorder. There are still many physically driven food sensitivities that we yet do not understand. And again, we don't have to diagnose the clients. We're just there to support them. All right, so we are at the hour. If you have any other questions, please contact me.